In 1994, the small island nation of Trinidad and Tobago was rocked by the kidnapping and murder of 4 people. The victims were held for ransom, but despite their families paying the ransom, they were still brutally killed. The case became known as the Dole Chadee trial, named after the gang leader who was accused of being the mastermind behind the crime. The trial lasted for almost 4 years, and it became one of the most high-profile cases in the history of Trinidad and Tobago. The prosecution relied on a combination of forensic evidence, witness testimony, and circumstantial evidence to build their case against Dole Chadee and his gang. However, the defense argued that the evidence was insufficient and that their clients had been falsely accused. They also alleged that the confessions of the accused had been obtained through torture and intimidation by the police. The trial was not without controversy, as there were allegations of witness intimidation and police corruption. The defense also claimed that the trial was biased against their clients, citing the fact that they were denied bail and that the judge had made prejudicial comments during the trial. Despite these challenges, the prosecution was able to secure a conviction against Dole Chadee and 4 members of his gang. They were sentenced to death, and their executions were carried out in 1999. The trial was a watershed moment in Trinidad and Tobago's legal history. It highlighted the challenges of prosecuting serious crimes in a small island nation with limited resources and a relatively inexperienced legal system. But it also exposed some of the darker aspects of Trinidad and Tobago society, including issues of crime, corruption, and poverty. Dole Chadee, like many other gang leaders in the country, had grown up in poverty and had turned to a life of crime as a means of survival. The trial also highlighted the need for police reform in Trinidad and Tobago. There were allegations that the police had used coercive tactics to extract confessions from the accused, which raised questions about the reliability of the evidence presented in the trial. The controversies surrounding the Dole Chadee trial did not end with the execution of the accused. There were allegations of police harassment against the families of the accused, as well as claims of witness intimidation. The case also raised questions about the use of the death penalty in Trinidad and Tobago. The country had only recently reinstated the death penalty, and the execution of Dole Chadee and his gang was one of the first in decades. Some argued that the death penalty was a necessary deterrent against crime, while others questioned its effectiveness and morality. The execution of Dole Chadee and his gang remains a controversial issue in Trinidad and Tobago to this day. The trial also had wider implications beyond Trinidad and Tobago. It highlighted the need for international cooperation in the fight against organized crime, as the Dole Chadee gang had ties to other criminal organizations in the region. The trial also had wider implications beyond Trinidad and Tobago. It highlighted the need for international cooperation in the fight against organized crime, as the Dole Chadee gang had ties to other criminal organizations in the region. The case also raised questions about the role of the media in high-profile trials. The case also raised questions about the role of the media in high-profile trials. The media had played a significant role in shaping public opinion about the trial, and some criticized them for sensationalizing the case and for presenting biased coverage. Overall, the Dole Chadee trial was a complex and controversial case that exposed some of the challenges and issues facing Trinidad and Tobago. It highlighted the need for police reform, the importance of addressing poverty and inequality, and the challenges of prosecuting serious crimes in a small island nation. It also exposed the darker aspects of Trinidad and Tobago's society, including issues of crime, corruption, and violence. The trial remains a significant event in the country's history and continues to be debated and discussed to this day. The story of Dole Chadee and his gang is a tragic one, but it also sheds light on some of the darker aspects of Trinidad and Tobago's history. The country has long struggled with issues of crime and violence, and the story of the country has long struggled with issues of crime and violence, and the story of Dole Chadee is just one example of this. But there is more to this story than just the crimes themselves. In many ways, the story of Dole Chadee is also a story of social and economic inequality in Trinidad and Tobago. Dole Chadee grew up in poverty, and he was often exposed to violence and crime from a young age. Like many others in Trinidad and Tobago, he was forced to turn to crime as a means of survival. This is not to excuse the crimes that Dole Chadee and his gang committed, but it is important to understand the root causes of such violence. In order to address issues of crime and violence in Trinidad and Tobago, we must also address the underlying social and economic issues that contribute to them. The story of Dole Chadee is a difficult one, but it is also a story that is important to tell. It reminds us of the importance of addressing issues of inequality and poverty, and of the need to find solutions to the complex social and economic problems that plague many countries in the world today.
This is one of Dole Chadee mansions.
When they come and they see me, the man are all shooters at the scooter. The summer.
One of Trinidad's biggest drug dealers.
When they come, they can't be a boss man and walk in them. A fucking man jump in a car and say,
We're in the vicinity of Princeton, and this is a landmark to many. This is a well-known juggler house known as Dole Chadee, such an art form.
His admissions appeared to confirm that corrupt officials had protected him for years. Police would raid his home only to find that he'd been tipped off and drugs removed before they got there. 15 serious charges, including cocaine trafficking, had still come to court 10 years after he was first charged. And in one case, he'd been freed when court documents disappeared. They were later discovered during a search of his home.
In Trinidad and Tobago, people were afraid of Chadee, not just because he had a gang.
Chadee and his gang members were read their death warrants. The first 3 were scheduled to hang at 6 a.m. the next day.
If you like these videos, give us a like, comment, and subscribe so we can keep delivering more content.